The Kingdom of the Netherlands has been a strategic development partner to Kenya dating back to the 1970s. One of the key support areas has been in the agriculture sector. This cooperation has seen increased trade between these economies, which also aims at working towards addressing the rampant food security challenges. Dynamics of funding projects across the world are however changing, and development partners are shifting focus from aid to trade. The Dutch government's plan is that by the year 2020, donor aid will be cut off, and instead, sustainable means of upscaling projects to increase trade will be explored. This means that projects have to creatively come up with activities which will grow the projects beyond the funding timelines. What does this transition mean for the two economies?
Kenya is a very important partner, especially in agriculture, for the Netherlands, and it will stay that way. It will even get better, I think. And we always say aid to trade. They forget the trade and investment. That's a common made mistake. That's what we do ourselves. So it's from aid to trade and investment. And part of the more private sector development programs will still be available for Kenya. So in that it won't be a black and white change in 2020. So that's very important to realize, I think. So Kenya will stay a very important partner. We're working together with a big focus on private sector development.
So far, the Dutch government has funded 26 projects along various agricultural value chains, and as the 2020 funding deadline approaches, discussions on how projects can leverage gains, experiences, and align with the public and private partnership policies in Kenya cannot be overlooked.
In the minds of the people formulating the PPPs, do they have a common agenda? What is it in terms of setting goals, in terms of creating a structure within which they will operate, in terms of putting in systems and standards around where they will operate, in terms of identifying what the skill sets or the staffing that they will need? It is very necessary that you actually have those clearly thought out, and then if they do not have that, then you actually take them through a strategic orientation so that they can get to understand how to integrate something that can be made workable.
AgriProFocus Kenya organized a learning event which brought together these projects to share experiences and find workable solutions on what needs to be done for transition from aid to trade to be effective.
From my perspective, the transition is, yes, the Dutch government as the investor is transiting from aid to trade, but the recipients of the so-called aid money that has been injected into projects has to also start from there. So it has to be incubated in the programs for the non-governmental organizations, so these are the NGOs, but also for the private sector, because the private sector plays a critical role in all these programs. And if we are looking at moving beyond aid and talking about trade, we are looking at the private sector as an investor. So that has to already be incubated in the program as we engage the private sector, as we engage the farm organizations, as we engage with government and government agencies. That already needs to be a discussion that's going on.
Yeah, the first thing we'll do is to really do in-depth studies of the three sectors: aquaculture, horticulture and dairy. Some quantitative analysis of these three production sectors, if you wish, and to see how the existing projects fit in, how they contribute to those sectors. That provides the framework. It also provides an overview of instruments that the Dutch and other donors and the government are using to stimulate those sectors. That will be, if you wish, the baseline. And that will also be needed to get a more in-depth understanding of what opportunities are for the future.
And what challenges are some of the ongoing projects encountering with the transition?
The concept of PPP has not been conceptualized by many people and also the farmers. If you go to the county government currently, you tell them this is a PPP, and if you want us to work with you together, then tell us what you will contribute towards the project. So they have the mentality that most of the projects which come are 100% donor funded. So it's quite difficult to explain to them that they need to contribute towards the project.
I think one of the most important things is, first of all, to appreciate that we have come from a donor funding kind of concept. So the transition stage, of course, has its challenges in that when you are used to just donor funding, then all you need to do is to show what activities you've done with your program. But you see, within the implementation of these initial funded programs, we had issues which were impacting on, say, food security. But sustainability is a word that has also come in lately. Now, sustainability cannot go on just funding. There has to be an aspect of business and an aspect of, as I said, on the issues related to profit, planet, and the people. So when you look at it, even for a child, you need a willing period. So especially for us who work a lot with the smallholders, the issues of governance, the issues of training them to think in a business way, the issues to move out of subsistent to possibly commercial farming, those are the intricacies which have to be put into place.
The private sector is still hesitant. I think it's kind of an agenda that is still being pushed by NGOs, by the donors, the embassies and all of that are the ones that are really pushing aid to trade. Businesses are still yet to see the opportunities that this bring. And effort now should probably be now utilized, or we should put more effort to talk to private sector, who can actually be the best partner. In this aid to trade, you need private sector, but you have to show them the benefits. They don't just come in because they are not an NGO. They are actually in for business. And if you show them the business opportunities, it's going to work. At the moment, it is still going out in seminars, in workshops, where NGOs meet, where the private sector is not really well represented and they are not aware of what is this aid to trade.
For new projects, the workshop provided a learning platform.
I'm very excited about the direction that they're taking because it gives us an opportunity to really implement the kinds of projects that we want to implement. So it's been, even so far, we're just starting up that project, but the process of designing it has already been a very interactive approach with them. They definitely don't take the traditional approach of putting out a call for proposals and you submit something and then they review it and you either get it or you don't. It was very much a kind of an iterative process where we designed it kind of together. So that I think is already a good start in the way that you run the project. So you're doing something very much in conjunction with the same kinds of goals.
On the other hand, most ongoing projects have already embraced the move from aid to trade by creating a business case with every activity they undertake in a project.
Within, we're looking at how we price our products and services, looking at market-based solutions in terms of demand and supply. So the products that we provide are market-based in terms of pricing, and we feel that we're able to generate enough revenue to help us break even and become profitable. So we're not looking at so much, for the start, we're looking at external financing to help us propel ourselves to that level of break-even. Because as an enterprise, we're looking at 3 years for us to become more profitable and more interesting as a company. And with the Dutch financing coming in different elements, we look at both debt, equity, soft capital coming in, and a bit of grant as well. But we're not so much aligned to debt for maximizing our capital needs. But we're looking more in terms of balancing the two, hybrid kind of financing that we can be able to utilize to help us take the path to sustainability.
To further share experiences within the projects, 4 thematic topics that impact projects were discussed, whose focus was on building effective long-term public and private partnerships, producing safe and nutritious foods for Kenyans and East Africans, inclusive business, which entails socio-economic importance of involvement of youth and women in the agricultural sector, and on how to access additional finance and markets. From the inclusive business theme, great emphasis was placed on the importance of including women in agriculture, noting that they account for 50% of the rural workforce in the sector.
An inclusive business is one that encourages co-creation, that encourages collaboration, and that also brings on board the people we would consider the bottom of the pyramid folks who ordinarily are not very much involved in projects or that we are trying to move away from. But then how do we create processes that actually encourage the integration of these people. And some of these people that we discussed were the women and the youth, and we gave examples of programs where they are being actively engaged in business and also being actively engaged in planning and also in deciding about how to use incomes even as low as the household level. Another aspect of inclusive business that also came up is that an inclusive business must be competitive. What is the business case that you present to in your public-private partnership or in your program? Does the private sector buy your business case, and do they even have the commitment to make it through and to be part of the process?
Lessons were shared on how projects have integrated the various themes into their operations.
One of the main angles in inclusive business in most of our programs was to integrate the women and the youth. And some of the success stories have been told about how, because of integrating women and youth, incomes have improved, and there's joint planning and visioning within the households and also within the producer organizations. And we also got a case of where one of the private sector players told us that he has actually employed 60% of his staff force is actually women. So you can see that there's deliberate effort from some of us to integrate the women and the youth. We've also been given a case of where deliberate efforts are also made to ensure that the women are nurtured and given enough guidance so that they can also be part of the programs and also take share in the business cases that the programs are promoting. Another strategy that has been used in projects is the co-investment, where we actually encourage the grantees in our projects to also be co-investors. If we are contributing 50% to your operations or to your project, then can you also show commitment by contributing another 50%? And another strategy that has been used is the telephone farmer strategies, where a lot of the beneficiaries are the youth and the women, because again, the people who are the telephone farmers are working middle or upper middle class people who are very much busy in their careers, but the people who benefit on the ground are actually the women and the young people.
Under access to finance and markets, innovation on financing alternative was one of the key highlights, with a need for banks to improve financing models for projects. Value addition on produce was cited as a mechanism of ensuring profit maximization and sustainability of projects. On building effective long-term partnerships, having leaner consortiums was a key learning point for the new projects, which translates to faster decision-making.
One of the key lessons that came out was on the contribution aspect, that every partner should be able to bring something on the table in terms of what they are contributing. This will then therefore ensure that there is ownership by these various partners. There was also another lesson that touched on donors, because many of the partnerships that are formed normally have a donor behind them, and this donor also has various kinds of restrictions. So when the partnerships are being formed, it's important to have clarity on how these arrangements are going to work so that they're also in line with the donor's expectation.
On production of safe and nutritious foods, among the key highlights was the need for organizations not to just focus on quantities produced, but quality of the produce too.
A number of organizations gave different examples of how they're integrating safety and making sure their foods are nutritious. Some of them, some gave like they use minimum chemicals to make sure that they don't have a lot of chemicals in the produce. They also mentioned about training farmers, capacity building of farmers on food safety, adhering to standards, so that the standards which the produce is supposed to adhere to, training farmers on those standards, and then improving quality and so forth through that. And then some even mentioned the traceability of products, developing a national agenda on traceability of products. Right now, it's very difficult to trace products because they're all mixed up, especially for the local markets. So how do you trace which product came from where in the supermarkets? And so developing that kind of program. And then engaging with the public health regulators and food safety departments of the ministry in order to ensure quality is adhered to, profiling farmers in terms of how safe their produce are, and so forth, and also engaging, creating platforms for safety discussions across different farmers.
A key success story on a Dutch-funded partnership is the Latia Resource Center, situated 60 kilometers from Nairobi in Kajiado County. The center provides training and business support to already existing farmers and the youth, but has managed to be self-reliant and profitable through these activities.
The essential thing about Latia Resource Center is that it's working on something that is lacking: the practical skills to engage in farming as a business. A lot of people underestimate what is needed for farming because the people who are engaged in farming are doing it as a part-time, pastime activity. Latia Resource Center wants to build agripreneurs, and it has this vision that we very much share. And also it's being run as a business, it's being managed as a business. Peter Moudet is very much a hands-on managing director who is grooming expertise, grooming experts, grooming professionals to pass on skills in farming as a business.
One such beneficiary is Anthony Roquero, a youth who is passionate on venturing into agribusiness.
My interest in agriculture is to learn and to make sure that underutilized land in Kenya, they are put into use. And as an apprentice in Latia Resource Center, I believe I'm in the right place because Latia Resource Center is one of the modern farms in Kenya that equip apprentices with the knowledge to practice.
Institutes such as Latia Resource Center goes to show how all stakeholders can benefit from such partnerships. On the other hand, there is need for creation of a joint learning platform for synergies to be created among these projects.
We are an international network. There are innovations that are being introduced, Dutch technology, which is relevant, which needs to be adopted to the Kenyan context. But how do we do that? By engaging all the stakeholders in the sector, in the agriculture sector. I'll give an example of the potato sector. So they're all different players in the potato sector, and everyone comes with their comparative advantage. As AgriProFocus, we are a neutral platform. So we are able to engage people who would ordinarily not see eye to eye, or ideally would consider themselves competitors. But if we use this platform where we look at issues from a sector perspective and what each partner is bringing, what's their comparative advantage, then we are able to bring stakeholders for the betterment of a sector, or a subsector in this case.
As the world shifts focus towards the trade development agenda, the Kingdom of the Netherlands is committed to partnering with Kenya and other like-minded partners to address food security concerns and foster trade.